My friends, listen to me carefully. Every day begins twice. It begins first in your mind, and then it begins in your calendar. Before the sun rises over your city, it has already risen in your spirit. Before your body ever moves, your thoughts have already set the direction of your life. Because when the ruler within awakens, everything outside must submit. You are the governor of your destiny, the steward of your potential, and the reflection of your creator. So rise, rule, and reign, for the kingdom is within you. The law of the morning says this: you can never control your future if you cannot control your first hour. Your morning is not just a time, it is a territory. And whoever owns your morning owns your day. If the world owns it, the world controls your direction. If social media owns it, distraction becomes your master. But if purpose owns it, destiny bows to your command. That is why the scripture says, in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus went to a solitary place to pray. Why? Because he understood the principle of divine order. You manage the invisible before you manifest the visible. You secure victory in the unseen world before you ever walk into the seen one. You win the battle of the day before breakfast. I want you to write this somewhere deep in your mind. The way you begin the day determines the way you command it. If you start your morning in confusion, you multiply confusion. If you start it in clarity, you multiply clarity. If you begin it in fear, you invite fear to follow you. But if you begin it in faith, you attract favor all day long. Let me tell you something that changed my life. Years ago, I asked the Lord, why does it seem that successful people manage so much with so little time, while others waste whole days doing nothing? And I heard this phrase in my spirit: because success is not a mystery, it is management. God will never give you more time. He will give you more to do with the time you already have. So if you mismanage your mornings, you mismanage your mission. Every pilot knows that the hardest part of flight is takeoff. Once you're in the air, momentum carries you. But if you fail in takeoff, the whole journey is delayed. That's how life works. The morning is your takeoff runway. If you stumble at the start, you struggle through the rest. So you must learn to treat your morning as holy ground. It is sacred because it decides everything that follows. Now, some of you wonder why you feel powerless during the day. It's because you give your power away before 8 a.m. You scroll before you still your mind. You consume before you commune. You react before you reflect. And you call it being informed, but you're actually being influenced. You cannot build a strong mind on borrowed opinions. If you start your morning in confusion, you multiply confusion. If you start it in clarity, you multiply clarity. If you begin it in fear, you invite fear to follow you. But if you begin it in faith, you attract favor all day long. The way you begin the day determines the way you command it. So why do you begin your day before hearing from your Creator? My friend, the morning is your meeting with God and with yourself. It is not a time to perform, it is a time to prepare. It is not a time to run, it is a time to recalibrate. It is the council room of kings, the throne room of thinkers, the classroom of destiny. When you understand this, you stop saying, I'm not a morning person. You realize that mornings don't belong to the sleepy, they belong to the strategic. The moment your eyes open, the world begins to pull on you. Responsibilities, notifications, noise, all competing for your attention. But a strong mind rises above that pull. It says, before I give the world my energy, I will give heaven my attention. Let me say this as the principle of life. You cannot win the day with a distracted dawn. The quality of your day is not decided by what happens to you, but by what happens within you before the world begins. Your first thoughts are the architects of your environment. If they are structured by truth, the rest of the day builds in order. If they are scattered by distraction, the rest of the day collapses in chaos. That is why successful people guard their first hour like a treasure chest. They understand that morning is not something you stumble into, it is something you steward. They set rituals of reflection, prayer, reading, and vision. Not because it's trendy, but because it's transformative. And I tell you today, the greatest investment you can make in your destiny is not in the stock market, not in property, not in popularity. It is in the first hour of your morning, because that's where your thoughts are unformed, your spirit is open, and your direction can be decided. That's where kings plan, prophets hear, and leaders align. So here's your revelation today. If you master your morning, you will master your life. If you dominate the dawn, you will dominate your destiny. This is the law of the morning. It is the first and greatest discipline of a mind that rules rather than reacts, because every day begins twice, first in your mind, then in your calendar. And the one who owns the morning commands the rest. Write this down somewhere deep in your spirit. Touch your purpose before you touch your phone. That is the law of purpose before input. You see, purpose is not a topic, it's a foundation. Everything in creation has a reason for its existence. The sun rises to give light. The seed breaks to give life. The mind awakens to give meaning. But most people begin their day before remembering why they exist. They wake up and immediately open a portal, a screen filled with everyone else's plans, everyone else's noise, everyone else's purpose, and then wonder why their own life feels confused. The truth is this: if you start your day with the world, you will spend the day reacting. But if you start your day with purpose, you will spend the day creating. Purpose gives direction. Input gives distraction. And whichever one you allow first will govern your day. Let me say it this way: whatever enters first rules next. The first voice you hear in the morning becomes the loudest voice in your decisions. That's why the enemy doesn't have to destroy your purpose. He only has to distract it. He knows if he can occupy your attention, he can hijack your direction. You were not designed to begin your day in confusion. You were designed to begin in communion. Communion with your Creator. Communion with your purpose. Because purpose is the compass of the mind. It tells you where to point your thoughts. Without it, even productivity becomes busyness. And busyness without direction is wasted energy. I remember flying to a conference years ago, sitting beside a young executive. He was scrolling through his phone, replying to messages, checking news, switching apps restless before breakfast. I smiled and asked, "What are you doing?" He said, "Catching up." I said, "Catching up with who?" He said, "With the world." I said, "That's your problem. You're catching up with the world instead of catching up with your why." Listen carefully. Before you meet with the world, meet with your mission. Before you hear their opinions, hear your assignment. Before you take in their noise, tune into heaven's voice. Because what you feed your mind first becomes your internal fuel for the rest of the day. The law of purpose before input demands that you decide your direction before you consume any information. Don't start your day with what others want from you. Start it with what you were sent to do. Purpose is your filter. It tells you what deserves your attention. It separates the urgent from the important. It decides what you must respond to and what you must release. Now, let me show you something profound. Most people don't lose focus because they lack discipline. They lose focus because they lack definition. If you don't define your purpose, you will live at the mercy of other people's emergencies. You spend your life reacting to notifications instead of fulfilling your assignment. That is why the morning must begin with this question: why did I wake up today? If you can't answer that, you are awake but not alive. Purpose gives birth to energy. When you know why you are, you no longer need someone to motivate you. Purpose is fuel. It burns from within. You know, I often tell people the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but life without purpose. To live without purpose is to exist without meaning, to succeed without fulfillment, to run without direction. And if that is true for life, it is also true for every day of your life. A day without purpose is 24 hours of existence without advancement. So here's the first discipline of a strong mind. Begin your morning by activating your why. Before you pick up your phone, pick up your purpose. Before you check your messages, check your mission. Before you open a feed, open your faith. Ask yourself, what must I achieve today that moves me closer to my calling? What kind of person must I become today to carry that calling? What do I need to eliminate today that distracts me from my direction? These are not ordinary questions. They are alignment questions. They bring your thoughts under the authority of your assignment. When you begin your day this way, your mind receives its orders before the world gives its opinions. Your spirit becomes the CEO of your brain. You move from reaction to rulership. This is what it means to have mental authority. You own your thinking rather than rent it from culture. You become intentional instead of impulsive, purpose-centered instead of people-centered. You will notice something powerful. When you start your day with purpose, your appetite for trivial things begins to die. The gossip doesn't taste the same. The noise doesn't sound the same. The scrolling doesn't satisfy you anymore. Why? Because you've fed on something higher. You've touched your why before touching your world. Let me declare this truth over you. The strength of your mind tomorrow depends on what you start feeding it today. The person who begins with purpose ends with peace. Purpose at dawn produces power at dusk. So tomorrow morning, when you open your eyes, do not reach for your device, reach for your destiny. Take 5 minutes to remind yourself who you are, where you are going, and why you are going there. Say it out loud, write it down, anchor it deep. Then, and only then, let the world in, because now you have a filter strong enough to lead it. That is the law of purpose before input. If you master this law, you will no longer live on borrowed energy or borrowed direction. You will rise each morning as a governor of your thoughts, a steward of your purpose, and a leader of your day. Because the moment you touch your purpose first, everything else must submit to it. Write this principle somewhere. You will never forget it. Who you are must come before what you do. That is the law of identity before activity. You see, the world today has confused busyness with purpose. People are rushing everywhere, doing everything, trying to prove something, but they have forgotten who they are. They're active, but not accurate. They're moving, but not meaningful. They're chasing results while losing their roots. Hear me carefully. Activity is not the evidence of effectiveness. You can be busy building castles for others and still be sleeping under bridges yourself. You can be surrounded by noise but empty of identity. You can be productive but still not progressive. Before God gave Adam a task, he gave him an identity. He said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. Only after that did he say, have dominion. Because you cannot dominate the world around you if you have not defined the person within you. Dominion is the offspring of definition. So many people are working jobs they hate because they never discovered who they are. They are performing roles instead of fulfilling purpose. They are being what others expect instead of becoming what they were created to be. That's why they're exhausted. Not because the work is hard, but because the work doesn't match their identity. The most dangerous person on earth is not an evil person. The most dangerous person is a busy person who has lost their sense of self. They do everything but accomplish nothing. They climb ladders that are leaning against the wrong walls. They fight battles that were never theirs to fight. That's why every morning, before you plan your activities, you must return to your identity. Ask yourself, who am I? Not what you do, not where you work, not what people call you. Who am I? Because identity gives birth to integrity. If you know who you are, you don't have to pretend to be something else. You don't have to impress anyone to feel important. You don't have to compete because you are complete. Listen carefully. When identity is absent, insecurity is present. And when insecurity is present, imitation is inevitable. People without identity copy those who appear confident. They wear labels to feel valuable. They measure success by comparison instead of conviction. That's why social media has become an altar of false identity. Millions are sacrificing authenticity for approval. They trade originality for imitation. They chase likes but lose life. They project what they want people to see instead of who they were born to be. But when you know your identity, you walk differently. You talk differently. You think differently. You don't need applause to feel significant. You don't need a stage to know you're important. You carry your confidence quietly because it's not borrowed, it's built. I remember a conversation I had with a young leader who told me, Dr. Munroe, I want to do great things. I said, that's good. But before you do great things, make sure you become a great person. Because if you try to do great things before becoming a great person, your success will destroy you. What you build outwardly will collapse inwardly if your inner identity cannot sustain it. Activity without identity leads to anxiety, but when identity comes first, activity becomes peace. You work from rest, not rest from work. You perform from confidence, not for validation. Let me give you a picture. A tree does not try to bear fruit to prove it's a tree. It bears fruit because it is a tree. Identity precedes productivity. So it is with you. Your fruit flows naturally when your roots are secure. Some of you are asking God for new opportunities, but heaven is waiting for you to remember yourself. Before he opens new doors, he must secure your sense of identity. Because if he blesses you while you are still pretending, the blessing will expose the fake. You see, the strength of your activity depends on the stability of your identity. If who you are changes every time life challenges you, you will never build consistency. But when your sense of self is anchored in truth, storms can shake your schedule, but never your soul. I am a leader, not a follower. I am disciplined, not distracted. I am purpose-driven, not pressure-driven. I am a child of God, not a product of culture. I am a leader, not a follower. I am disciplined, not distracted. I am purpose-driven, not pressure-driven. I am a child of God, not a product of culture. 5 declarations like these every morning will recalibrate your spirit before the noise of the world begins. They remind your mind who is in charge. They shift you from doing for approval to doing from assurance. Identity is the root of authority. When you know who you are, circumstances lose power over you. Criticism cannot crush you because it doesn't define you. Failure cannot frighten you because it doesn't reduce you. And success cannot seduce you because it doesn't complete you. This is the law of identity before activity, the foundation of a disciplined life and a strong mind. Every morning, before you engage the day, remind yourself that being precedes doing. Because if you forget who you are, you will spend your life doing things that don't matter. But if you know who you are, everything you do begins to matter. So here is your morning discipline. Before you pick up your to-do list, pick up your to-be list. Every morning, declare who you are, not what you need to do. Say it with authority. Because in the kingdom of purpose, identity is the passport to destiny. And until you discover who you are, what you do will never make sense. So tomorrow morning, don't rush into motion. Pause, reflect, declare, then move not as a confused worker, but as a conscious creator. Not as a reactor, but as a ruler. Not as someone busy, but as someone becoming. Now, my friends, write this truth in the tablet of your mind. Before the crowd wakes, separate yourself to meet yourself. That is the law of focused isolation. Great minds think alone before they think aloud. Every man and woman who ever changed the world first withdrew from it long enough to discover themselves within it. You cannot lead people you are afraid to leave for a moment. And you cannot hear divine instruction in the noise of constant interaction. That is the law of identity before activity. When you master it, the world will no longer define you, you will define the world around you. That's why Jesus, the most powerful man who ever lived, often withdrew to a solitary place to pray. He wasn't avoiding people, he was aligning purpose. He understood the mystery of focused isolation, that solitude is the sanctuary where revelation is born. Isolation is not loneliness, it is leadership training. Loneliness is emptiness. Isolation is preparation. When God wants to deposit greatness in a person, he removes the crowd, he disconnects you before he develops you. He separates before he sends. He silences before he speaks. Isolation is the price of illumination. The secret of power is privacy. Before Moses faced Pharaoh, he faced the desert. Before David faced Goliath, he faced lions in solitude. Before Paul wrote letters that changed the world, he spent years in the wilderness of Arabia. Before Joseph ruled Egypt, he sat in silence in a prison cell. Hear me, your isolation season is not punishment, it is preparation. It is heaven's strategy to strengthen your mind for the weight of your calling. Because exposure before maturity brings destruction. God hides you to heal you. He separates you to sharpen you. He removes noise to renew your nature. Let me tell you a story. When I was a young man, full of ambition and ideas, I used to chase every opportunity, every meeting, every invitation, every conference I was there, until one day an older mentor said to me, "Myles, you are too available to be valuable." I didn't understand. He said, "Gold is rare because it's hidden. Its value is in its inaccessibility. Protect your presence if you want to preserve your power." That word changed me. From that day, I began to schedule silence the same way others schedule meetings. I realized that every time I met with myself, I was meeting with my mission. And every time I silenced the world, I amplified heaven. You see, your mind is like a lake. When it's stirred by noise, it becomes muddy. You can't see clearly. But when it's still, it reflects the sky. Stillness allows you to see heaven's reflection within you. That's why focused isolation is not withdrawal, it is alignment. You withdraw from distraction to reconnect to direction. So every morning, before the world intrudes, Take 10 minutes, just you, your thoughts, and your purpose. No phone, no noise, no conversation, just stillness. Ask yourself, what am I hearing? What am I feeling? What am I becoming? Don't rush to answer. Let silence reveal. Some of you have been praying for clarity, but you can't hear because you won't be still. You're surrounded by constant noise, people's opinions, digital chatter, emotional static. Your mind is never silent long enough for wisdom to enter. You say, God doesn't speak to me. But the truth is, he's been speaking all along. You just haven't been quiet enough to recognize his voice. If you do not schedule isolation, the world will schedule distraction. If you do not guard silence, noise will invade your soul. If you do not pause, you will confuse movement for meaning. Let me give you a principle. You cannot hear the whisper of wisdom while shouting with the world. Some people are so busy being seen that they never see themselves. They spend their days talking to everyone and listening to no one, not even God. That's why they repeat the same mistakes. They never stop long enough to learn. But those who practice focused isolation carry an authority that confuses average minds. Because solitude breeds strength. When you walk out of silence, you carry sound that shakes rooms. Your presence becomes heavy with clarity. Your eyes carry peace. Your words carry weight. Your decisions carry direction. Because silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of strategy. It's where divine downloads happen. It's where mental clutter is cleared and creative ideas are conceived. It's where confidence grows roots and conviction gains volume. I know the modern world celebrates constant connection, but the most connected minds are often the most disconnected from themselves. You cannot know your purpose if you never sit quietly with it. You cannot lead the noise if you are addicted to it. And you cannot renew your mind if you never rest your mind. So every morning, before you meet the crowd, meet your creator. Before you talk to people, talk to purpose. Before you scroll, sit still. That is the secret place of power. Do not be afraid of being alone. Be afraid of being distracted. Because greatness is born in the womb of isolation. When you learn to walk with yourself, you stop running after everyone else. And when you hear heaven clearly, you no longer chase human approval. This is the law of focused isolation. A mind that cannot be still cannot be strong. But a mind trained in solitude becomes unstoppable. Because in silence, you remember your source. And the one who remembers his source will never lose his strength. Now, hear me carefully. Do not be afraid of being alone. Be afraid of being distracted. Because greatness is born in the womb of isolation. When you learn to walk with yourself, you stop running after everyone else. And when you hear heaven clearly, you no longer chase human approval. That is the law of mental nutrition. This is the law of focused isolation. A mind that cannot be still cannot be strong. But a mind trained in solitude becomes unstoppable. Because in silence, you remember your source. And the one who remembers his source will never lose his strength. Some people begin their morning with junk, mental junk. They consume gossip, opinions, fear, and foolishness before they've even had breakfast. They scroll through the menu of mediocrity and wonder why their thoughts have no strength. But you cannot build a royal mind on the diet of the common. You cannot grow intellectual and spiritual power while feeding your brain emotional sugar. This is the law of focused isolation. A mind that cannot be still cannot be strong. But a mind trained in solitude becomes unstoppable. Because in silence, you remember your source. And the one who remembers his source will never lose his strength. That's why the scripture says, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. The word of God, truth, Wisdom, revelation, is the breakfast of destiny. The mind that feeds on truth becomes unshakable. The mind that feeds on distraction becomes unpredictable. Let me tell you something. What you eat mentally determines your spiritual metabolism. Some people are slow to act, slow to believe, slow to grow because their mental diet is filled with empty calories. They consume entertainment, not enlightenment. They chew on opinions, not principles. They snack on social media, but starve on scripture. They feed on negativity, then wonder why their spirit is malnourished. If you want to build a strong mind, you must curate your mental menu. Don't let everyone cook for your consciousness. Be selective about what enters your intellect. Not everything that sounds smart is nutritious. Not everything that goes viral carries value. You see, wisdom is not just information, it is intake with discernment. A wise person doesn't consume everything, they choose carefully. They filter every idea through principle. They test every statement through truth. They measure every source by fruit. Let me make it plain. You cannot eat lies and expect to produce leadership. You cannot feed on fear and expect to walk in faith. You cannot meditate on mediocrity and expect to manifest greatness. Your diet decides your destiny. I met a young woman once who said, "Dr. Munroe, I feel so confused. My thoughts are all over the place." I asked her, "What do you read?" She said, "I read everything that pops up on my feed." I said, "That's your problem. You've made your mind a cafeteria open to anyone's cooking. If you wouldn't eat food from a stranger's dirty plate, why eat words from one?" The mind is sacred ground. It deserves sacred seed. That's why every morning you must consciously feed it with truth that strengthens it. Start your day with something that builds, not breaks. With something that lifts, not drains. With something that expands, not entertains. Read one principle from Scripture, one quote of wisdom, one paragraph of purpose. Feed your mind like a leader, not like a follower. Feed it strategy, not scandal. Feed it insight, not impulse. Feed it conviction, not confusion. Because what you put in your mind early will echo through your emotions all day long. If you start with truth, peace will follow. If you start with gossip, anxiety will follow. If you start with gratitude, joy will follow. If you start with complaint, chaos will follow. Let me tell you another principle. The first voice that enters your mind becomes the first architect of your mood. If you wake up to noise, you live in reaction. If you wake up to wisdom, you live in creation. I learned long ago that my mind is a garden. If I don't plant good seeds, weeds grow automatically. Negativity is natural. Wisdom is intentional. You don't have to try to grow weeds, just neglect the soil. But if you want flowers, you must cultivate them daily. So, cultivate your mind. Don't let it be a wild field of random thoughts. Water it with wisdom. Fertilize it with faith. Expose it to the sunlight of truth. When you do that, something extraordinary happens. Your mind begins to produce ideas effortlessly. Creativity flows naturally. You begin to see solutions where others see problems. You begin to speak peace where others speak panic. You begin to carry a calm authority because you are no longer a consumer of chaos. You are a producer of clarity. That's what happens when you feed your mind properly. Your vocabulary changes. Your attitude shifts. Your decisions mature. You start to attract people who are also well fed in wisdom. Let me close this law with a declaration you should speak every morning. Today, I will not let the world feed my mind junk. I will choose my thoughts like I choose my food, with wisdom. I will nourish my mind with truth, my spirit with gratitude, and my heart with vision. Because my mental diet determines my destiny. That is the law of mental nutrition. Feed your mind before you feed your body, and watch how your entire life begins to take on the shape of what you've been consuming. Because a strong mind is never born. It's built meal by meal, thought by thought, truth by truth. Now write this down. Your world responds to your words. That is the law of affirmation and declaration. Words are not sounds. They are spiritual forces. They are the most powerful substance in creation. The universe was not built with bricks. It was built with breath. When God said, "Let there be light," light appeared. He didn't push light. He didn't manufacture it. He spoke it. The same power that framed the universe is hidden in your tongue. That's why Proverbs says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit." Your life is eating what your lips are planting. Every word you speak becomes a seed that grows somewhere in your mind, in your relationships, in your results. Hear me. You are living today in the harvest of yesterday's words. And tomorrow, you will live in the harvest of what you speak today. You cannot declare weakness all week and expect strength on Sunday. You cannot speak defeat daily and expect victory monthly. You cannot curse your future and still hope to walk into blessing. The world was designed to obey language. That's why what you say becomes what you see. Your mind listens to your mouth. Your life follows your language. And your atmosphere conforms to your affirmations. So I ask you, what are you speaking into your mornings? When you rise, are your words commanding light or confessing darkness? Do you wake up saying, "I'm tired," or "I'm ready"? Do you declare, "I can't handle this," or "I am equipped for this"? Every morning you're writing the script of your day with your tongue. The law of affirmation declaration says that speech precedes substance. Nothing becomes real until it becomes verbal. When you speak, you give form to thought and permission to potential. That's why you must speak what you want, not what you fear. Don't verbalize the problem, vocalize the promise. Don't echo your pain, declare your purpose. Let me give you an example. I once met a man who told me, "Dr. Munroe, nothing ever works out for me." I said, "Say that again." He said, "Nothing ever works out for me." I smiled and said, "That's exactly why nothing does you keep giving your failure instructions. Your words are employees. They take your orders and go to work on your behalf. If you send them to create chaos, they will. If you send them to build peace, they will. If you send them to bring success, they will. So guard your declarations. Never say what you don't want to see. Never confess what contradicts your convictions. Even when life feels uncertain, let your words remain consistent with truth. Because words don't describe reality, they design it. Let me show you how powerful this is. A woman once told me, "Dr. Munroe, my children don't listen. They are rebellious." I said, "What do you call them?" She said, "Stubborn." I said, "Then that's what they'll become. You've already baptized them with that identity." She asked, "What should I call them?" I said, "Call them what you want to see: wise, obedient, responsible, blessed." Months later, she wrote back, "Something changed. My words changed first." That's the secret. If you change your speech, you change your season. Because your mouth is the steering wheel of your destiny. Where your words go, your life follows. Let me make it even plainer. Your words are like keys. They can either unlock doors or lock them shut. They can either open favor or invite frustration. They can either command peace or provoke chaos. That's why you must train your tongue to speak the language of life. Every morning, affirm who you are, not who you feel like being. Affirm what you believe, not what you see. Speak what aligns with heaven's design, not what agrees with your momentary emotion. Say it out loud until your mind believes it. Say it again until your heart agrees with it. Say it until your reality rearranges itself around it. Speak like this: I am strong in mind and steady in heart. I am disciplined, creative, and full of divine wisdom. I am surrounded by favor and guided by purpose. I am the head and not the tail. I am above only and not beneath. I attract solutions, not problems. I produce results, not excuses. Say it even when you don't feel it. Because you don't speak from feeling, you speak from faith. You don't declare from circumstance, you declare from conviction. Faith-filled words transform fearful realities. Listen, silence is not always holy. Sometimes it is dangerous. If you don't speak, something else will. If you don't declare truth, the world will declare lies for you. If you don't tell your mind what to believe, fear will volunteer to do the job. That's why each morning, before the world speaks, you must speak first. Before fear whispers, let faith roar. Before doubt speaks, let destiny answer. Let me declare this principle over you. You are the prophet of your own life. Your words are your prophecy. Every time you open your mouth, you are either predicting your promise or announcing your limitation. So speak carefully, because heaven and earth are listening. I challenge you to make this your daily habit. After you rise, look in the mirror and declare your own reality. Do it even if you feel foolish, because declarations are not about emotion, they are about creation. The first time you say it, it changes your atmosphere. The second time you say it, it changes your attitude. The third time you say it, it changes your identity. That is the law of affirmation and declaration. A strong mind is not just built by what you read, it's reinforced by what you repeat. So fill your morning with words of power. Speak them with faith, consistency, and conviction. Because what you speak into your day becomes what your day must obey. And what you declare about your life becomes what your life eventually displays. Now hear this with understanding. Emotions are wonderful servants, but they are terrible masters. That is the law of principle over emotion. Now hear this with understanding. God did not design emotion to rule you. He designed it to serve you. Emotion is fuel, not a steering wheel. When you let emotion drive, it will take you where you never intended to go. But when principle holds the wheel, emotion becomes your power, not your prison. You are the prophet of your own life. Your words are your prophecy. Every time you open your mouth, you are either predicting your promise or announcing your limitation. So speak carefully, because heaven and earth are listening. Every great downfall begins when emotion dethrones principle. The strongest people are not those who feel less, they are those who govern what they feel. You cannot trust your emotions to lead you, because emotions change faster than the weather. One day they tell you you're unstoppable. The next, they tell you you're unworthy. They are real, but they're not reliable. Principle says, I will do what is right even when it doesn't feel right. Emotion says, I'll do what feels good right now. Principle says, I'll remain disciplined even when I'm tired. Emotion says, I'll quit because I don't see results. Principle leads to progress. Emotion leads to paralysis. You cannot rise as a leader while remaining a slave to how you feel. Because leadership is not about always feeling confident. It's about acting on conviction even when you feel uncertain. You discipline yourself to move in the direction of truth, not temperature. Let me tell you something powerful. The difference between maturity and immaturity is this. The immature live by emotion. The mature live by principle. Children cry when they don't get what they want. Adults stay calm because they know delay doesn't mean denial. Maturity is emotional management. I met a young man once who said, "Dr. Munroe, I'm not consistent. Some days I'm on fire, other days I'm cold." I asked him, "What controls your actions, your feelings, or your values?" He said, "My feelings." I said, "That's why your life looks like a roller coaster." When feelings drive your decisions, your destiny will always be unstable. Principle is what keeps you steady in storms. Emotion is what makes you panic when waves rise. Emotion sees the wind. Principle remembers the word. Emotion focuses on the problem. Principle focuses on the promise. Emotion reacts. Principle responds. The law of principle over emotion means you decide before the test how you will behave during the test. You don't wait until the pressure comes to find your standard. You build it before the challenge. You rehearse your response before you need it. So when the heat rises, your heart stays cool. That's why I tell people, don't just have goals, have values. A goal can change with time. A principle is timeless. A goal can shift with circumstances. A principle stands through storms. When you live by principle, you cannot be manipulated by feelings, yours or anyone else's. Do you know why people fall back into bad habits? Because habits are emotional reflexes that ignore principle. When stress hits, they run to comfort instead of conviction. When fear comes, they choose safety over destiny. But a person ruled by principle learns to tell their feelings. You are allowed to exist, but you are not allowed to decide. Let me tell you this. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's obedience to principle in the presence of fear. Discipline is not the absence of temptation, it's faithfulness to truth despite it. Peace is not the absence of chaos, it's the rule of principle inside it. That's why Jesus said, "Not my will, but yours be done." Even in agony, he submitted emotion to assignment. He didn't feel like dying on that cross, but he followed principle, obedience, purpose, redemption. And because he did, every name under heaven now bows to his. That is the power of principle. Emotion may scream louder, but principle speaks longer. Emotion fades, but principle endures. So how do you live by this law? Every morning, before the day begins, decide one guiding principle that will govern your reactions. Maybe it's integrity. Maybe it's gratitude. Maybe it's excellence. Write it down. Declare it. Say, today I will respond from principle, not from pressure. Then, when the frustration comes, and it will, you remind your mind, my principle today is peace. When temptation comes, and it will, you remind yourself, my principle today is purity. When delay comes, say, my principle today is patience. You will find that emotion starts to lose its power when you lead it instead of obey it. Because feelings follow focus. And when your focus is principle, your emotions begin to align with truth. Hear this declaration. I am not a slave to my emotions. I am a steward of my principles. My feelings may visit, but they cannot reside. I am consistent because I am convicted, not because I am comfortable. That is the law of principle over emotion. It is the secret of stability in an unstable world. Live by what you know, not by what you feel. And you will find that when your principles rule, your emotions will finally rest. Now listen carefully, because this next law will separate the average from the exceptional. Train the mind by tackling resistance early. That is the law of the first challenge. A strong mind is not built by comfort, it is built by confrontation. If you want to grow in wisdom, strength, and clarity, you must learn to face difficulty first, not last, because resistance reveals readiness. The first challenge of your day is not a barrier, it is a builder. I call it the Goliath principle. David didn't wait until the afternoon to face the giant. He went early in the morning. He knew that courage delayed is confidence destroyed. He understood that when you conquer your greatest challenge early, the rest of the day submits easily. Most people spend their mornings avoiding pressure, hitting snooze, postponing hard tasks, escaping decisions. But let me tell you something. Avoidance weakens the soul. Every time you delay a duty, you teach your mind that fear is stronger than faith. You give your challenge power over your courage. But when you wake up and confront the first difficulty head on, you awaken something powerful inside you, momentum. Momentum is the secret engine of mastery. It's what turns ordinary days into extraordinary progress. Do you know why so many never rise above mediocrity? Because they confuse comfort with peace. Peace is internal order. Comfort is external ease. Comfort never built a conqueror. If you want the crown, you must face the conflict. If you want strength, you must train against resistance. If you want a strong mind, you must exercise it daily by doing what is necessary, not just what is easy. The mind is like a muscle. If you never lift anything heavy, it remains weak. If you never stretch it with challenges, it stays small. If you never test it with truth, it never transforms. That's why I say do the hardest thing first. Whatever task intimidates you most, face it before noon. Write that report. Make that call. Confront that fear. Begin that project. Slay your Goliath before breakfast. Because every challenge you face early becomes energy later. Here's a powerful truth. Every time you overcome resistance, you release revelation. Each victory expands your perspective. Each success reinforces your strength. Each obstacle you conquer in the morning becomes fuel for confidence all day long. Let me give you an example. Years ago, I met a young athlete training for a national championship. He told me, Dr. Munroe, my coach makes us run sprints at sunrise when it's cold, when we're tired. I asked, why? He said, because if you can conquer the pain when no one's watching, you can't be broken when everyone's watching. That's wisdom. Discipline in private creates dominance in public. When you train your mind to handle the first challenge of the day, the next ones shrink in comparison. You stop saying, I can't, and start saying, I already did. Confidence is not the absence of challenge. It's the memory of victory. That's why I say, do the hardest thing first. Whatever task intimidates you most, face it before noon. Write that report. Make that call. Confront that fear. Begin that project. Slay your Goliath before breakfast. Because every challenge you face early becomes energy later. That's why I tell people, stop praying for easy days. Pray for stronger minds. Don't ask God to remove the challenge. Ask him to reveal the champion. The purpose of challenge is not to destroy you, but to develop you. Gold is not afraid of fire. It needs fire to prove its gold. Let me tell you the secret to lasting transformation. Your day will always rise to the level of your first decision. If your first decision is discipline, the day bows in order. If your first decision is delay, the day collapses in chaos. You cannot expect divine order if you start your morning in disorder. So make it your ritual. Every morning, do one difficult thing on purpose. Something that demands focus, courage, or discomfort. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be deliberate. Wake up earlier than you feel like. Work out when you'd rather rest. Read instead of scroll. Pray instead of panic. Write instead of worry. Each time you do, you train your mind to obey discipline instead of emotion. And once your mind learns that it can survive discomfort, you become unstoppable. Let me give you a declaration for your mornings. I am not afraid of challenge. Resistance is my training ground. Discomfort is my classroom. Every problem I face today is an opportunity to prove who I've become. Because the truth is this, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. You can't learn mastery on calm waters. The storm you're trying to avoid might be the school that's preparing you for greatness. That's the law of the first challenge. When you rise each morning, don't run from the hard thing, run toward it. Face it first, and the rest of the day will bow in submission. Because a strong mind doesn't wait for courage to arrive. It creates courage by confronting difficulty early. And when you live by this law, you'll no longer fear resistance. You'll welcome it because you'll know that every challenge is a chance to rise higher. Now listen very carefully. This law will decide whether you grow or simply grow old. Information without reflection becomes entertainment. That is the law of reflection. Most people are not short of knowledge, they are short of understanding. They listen, but they don't learn. They read, but they don't remember. They consume ideas, but never digest them, because they confuse exposure with transformation. Hearing truth doesn't change you, thinking about it does. Reflection is the bridge between experience and wisdom. It is the process that turns moments into meaning. It is how the mind transforms information into insight and insight into instruction. Let me tell you something powerful. Growth is not guaranteed by activity, it is guaranteed by reflection. You can be busy all week and remain the same person if you never stop to ask, what did I learn? Because life does not reward motion, it rewards mindfulness. Every morning, before you rush into new things, take a few minutes to reflect on the old ones. Ask yourself 3 simple questions. What worked yesterday? What didn't? What can I do better today? That is how wisdom is born. Reflection is your mental accounting system. It helps you evaluate your profit and loss in the currency of wisdom. Without it, you keep repeating the same mistakes, decorating failure and calling it experience. You see, experience doesn't teach you anything. It's evaluated experience that teaches. There are people who have 20 years of activity, but only 1 year of reflection, and they call it 20 years of experience. No, it's 1 year repeated 20 times. Reflection makes experience valuable. It extracts the lesson from the event. It separates what happened to you from what can happen through you. It transforms pain into purpose and mistakes into mastery. Let me illustrate this. A king once sent 2 soldiers to battle. The first returned early, proud of his speed. The second returned late, carrying notes and maps of every path he took. The king said, the first has victory, the second has wisdom, because reflection captures the lesson so the victory can be repeated. When you reflect, you take ownership of your growth. You stop blaming circumstances and start observing patterns. You stop saying, why does this keep happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? Reflection is also a mirror for your motives. It forces you to pause and ask, why did I do that? Was my choice based on truth or fear? Am I being led by vision or by validation? A person who never reflects cannot refine. And a person who never refines will never rise. I remember a man who came to me once and said, Dr. Munroe, I keep making the same mistakes in business. I asked him, do you review your decisions at the end of each day? He said, no, I move on quickly. I said, that's the problem. You're running through lessons that were meant to make you wise, because failure unexamined will always return wearing new clothes. Reflection is your way of saying, I refuse to waste my experiences. Every event, every conversation, every victory, every pain, all of them contain a lesson waiting to be discovered. And if you don't reflect, you forfeit the reward. So every morning, after you wake and before you work, take 5 minutes of mental inventory. Ask, what did yesterday reveal about my habits? What did success show about my strength? What did failure reveal about my faith? What is God trying to teach me through what I just experienced? Write it down. Don't trust memory. Memory leaks, but writing locks. Keep a reflection journal, not to record what happened, but what it meant. Because meaning is the true measure of maturity. Let me give you a divine principle. Revelation travels at the speed of reflection. The slower you pause to think, the faster you grow in wisdom. Because insight doesn't come from movement, it comes from meditation. You can't receive instruction at the speed of distraction. Reflection also purifies your perspective. It allows you to step out of your emotions and look at your situation from the balcony of truth. You begin to see connections you missed before. You start to understand the why behind the what. And that understanding gives you peace in the middle of pressure. Let me give you a divine principle. So make reflection your daily discipline. Don't end your mornings in noise. End them in noticing. Because what you notice, you can nurture. And what you nurture, you can grow. Say this with me. Some people pray for answers, but the answers are already buried in their reflection. They just haven't slowed down long enough to dig them out. When you reflect, you activate the mind of God within you, that creative intelligence that connects patterns, produces wisdom, and unlocks solutions. This is the law of reflection. A strong mind doesn't just consume truth, it contemplates it. It doesn't just move, it measures. It doesn't just experience, it extracts. So remember this principle. You don't grow from what happens, you grow from what you understand about what happens. And that understanding only comes when you stop long enough to reflect. Now write this truth deep in your heart. Today, I will not rush through revelation. I will pause to process what I've lived. Every event in my life is my teacher. Every mistake is a message. Every day holds a lesson, and I will not leave it behind. That is the law of gratitude and vision. Every morning, before you step into your day, you must first anchor yourself in gratitude and then align yourself with vision. Because gratitude gives you perspective and vision gives you direction. One keeps you humble, the other keeps you hungry. Gratitude says, I already have enough to begin. Vision says, but I am not done becoming. When you walk in both, you live balanced, content, but not complacent, thankful, but still transforming. Gratitude grounds you. Vision guides you. Let me tell you this principle. What you thank God for increases in value. What you complain about decreases in power. If you start your day grumbling, your mind becomes heavy before you even move. But when you begin with gratitude, your spirit becomes light. Gratitude turns ordinary mornings into sacred moments. It transforms routine into revelation. Because gratitude is not a reaction, it is recognition. I remember an old woman I met in a small village. She had very little by the world's standards. Her house was small, her possessions few. But every morning, she would stand outside, lift her hand to the sky, and say, "Thank you, Father, for another day to breathe and believe." When I asked her why she did that, she said, "Because gratitude keeps my eyes open to the miracles I already have." My friend, that woman was richer in peace than many millionaires are in money. Gratitude opens your eyes to abundance. It doesn't change what you have, it changes how you see what you have. And once your sight changes, your situation follows. But gratitude alone is not enough. You also need vision, because gratitude keeps you grounded, but vision keeps you moving. Without vision, gratitude can turn into stagnation. Without gratitude, vision can turn into pride. You must walk with both wings if you want to fly straight. Vision is not fantasy, it's foresight. It is the picture of your potential seen through the eyes of faith. Vision gives meaning to your mornings. It turns waking up into rising up. When you know where you are going, even small steps feel significant. The scripture says, where there is no vision, the people perish. That means when you stop seeing forward, you start dying inward. Life loses power when it loses picture. You were designed to see before you succeed, to imagine before you manifest. So every morning, after you give thanks, take a moment to see forward. Close your eyes and visualize the person you are becoming. See, the future God placed inside you, the business growing, the family thriving, the purpose unfolding. Don't just dream about it. See it with conviction. Because whatever your mind consistently sees, your life eventually steers toward. Let me show you something powerful. The combination of gratitude and vision creates momentum. Gratitude fuels joy in the present. Vision fuels passion for the future. Together, they generate energy for progress. Gratitude says, I'm blessed where I am. Vision says, but I'm not stopping here. Gratitude roots you in peace. Vision raises you in purpose. Gratitude gives you patience. Vision gives you passion. When you start your morning with both, you become emotionally balanced and spiritually focused. You won't be easily discouraged because gratitude will remind you how far you've come. And you won't be easily distracted because vision will remind you where you're going. The world is full of people who are thankful but stuck, or ambitious but empty. Gratitude without vision becomes nostalgia. Vision without gratitude becomes greed. But gratitude with vision becomes greatness. I learned this habit early in my life. Every morning before I speak to anyone, I thank God for three things and visualize three things. I thank Him for what is, and I see what can be. It is simple, but it keeps my heart humble and my mind sharp. You can do the same. Every morning, ask yourself two questions. What am I thankful for right now? What am I reaching for next? Then speak them aloud. Father, I thank you for breath, for purpose, for opportunity. Now show me what's next and give me the courage to pursue it. That simple rhythm will align your emotions with heaven's order. It will turn your morning into a moment of management, managing your attitude and your direction before the world touches you. Father, I thank you for breath, for purpose, for opportunity. Now show me what's next and give me the courage to pursue it. Gratitude turns the light on inside. Vision points that light forward. When both are active, you become unstoppable, glowing with peace and guided by purpose. So tomorrow morning, before you run to your responsibilities, pause, take a breath of gratitude. Take a glance of vision and then move. Because the thankful heart and the focused mind together form a powerful force called destiny. Gratitude turns the light on inside. Vision points that light forward. When both are active, you become unstoppable, glowing with peace and guided by purpose. That simple rhythm will align your emotions with heaven's order. It will turn your morning into a moment of management, managing your attitude and your direction before the world touches you. Gratitude turns the light on inside. Vision points that light forward. When both are active, you become unstoppable, glowing with peace and guided by purpose. Gratitude turns the light on inside. Vision points that light forward. When both are active, you become unstoppable, glowing with peace and guided by purpose. That simple rhythm will align your emotions with heaven's order. It will turn your morning into a moment of management, managing your attitude and your direction before the world touches you. Release is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is not giving up, it is growing up. Strong minds know that freedom is not the absence of pressure, it is the absence of attachment. You were never designed to carry everything. You were designed to carry purpose, and purpose travels light. There are three things you must release every morning: yesterday's pain, today's pressure, and tomorrow's control. There are three things you must release every morning: yesterday's pain, today's pressure, and tomorrow's control. Forgiveness is the highest form of emotional intelligence. It is not saying you were right. It is saying you no longer have power over me. Forgiveness frees your mind to focus on your mission. So before you go forgive others, forgive yourself, forgive the moment. Release it. You cannot soar while chained to yesterday. Release is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is not giving up, it is growing up. Strong minds know that freedom is not the absence of pressure, it is the absence of attachment. You were never designed to carry everything. You were designed to carry purpose, and purpose travels light. Second, release today's pressure. Some of you wake up already tense, your mind racing, your heart heavy, your soul exhausted before sunrise. You're carrying everyone's expectations, every unfinished task, every unseen worry. But let me tell you something. You were never created to carry the world. You were created to steward your part in it. When you try to play God, you lose peace. When you remember you are human, you find grace. Third, release tomorrow's control. Worry is the misuse of imagination. It is faith in reverse, believing in the power of what could go wrong instead of what could go right. When you live in tomorrow, you rob today of its power. When you try to plan everything, you leave no room for providence. Let go of the need to know every outcome. Let go of the illusion that control equals safety. Because your peace doesn't come from prediction. It comes from preparation and trust. Hear me, release is not passive. It is powerful. It is the decision to stop fighting battles that are not yours. It is the wisdom to know that some things require prayer, not pressure. It is the courage to say, I will no longer be owned by what I can't change. Let me give you a picture. A pilot never takes off with excess weight. Before every flight, the crew checks the cargo. They remove what is unnecessary to ensure altitude. Your mind must do the same. Every morning, check your cargo. Ask yourself, what am I carrying that I don't need for today's journey? Then release it. Drop the emotional baggage. Unload the invisible weight, because you can't fly high if you refuse to travel light. I learned this lesson early in ministry. There were seasons when people misunderstood me, betrayed me, or walked away. I used to carry it in my thoughts, in my heart, in my tone, until one day God said, Myles, you can't lead nations while holding grudges. You can't preach freedom while living in frustration. That day, I released them, all of them. And when I did, I realized something. Release is not losing people, it's regaining peace. When you release, your mind becomes light. Your focus becomes sharp. Your joy returns. Your creativity flows. Your heart expands. You stop reacting and start reigning, because a free mind is a powerful mind. Let me remind you of this eternal truth. You cannot receive what is next until you release what is now. If your hands are still holding the ashes, they can't receive the oil. If your mind is still stuck in what failed, it can't form what's new. You have to let go so that grace can flow. Every morning, make release a ritual. When you open your eyes, before you move your body, release your mind, whisper it. I release the past, it no longer defines me. I release the pressure, it will not distract me. I release the future, it belongs to God. Breathe in peace. Breathe out control. That breath will become your prayer, and that prayer will become your power, because the mind that releases is the mind that reigns. The soul that lets go is the soul that grows. The person who surrenders what they can control gains mastery over what they can. This, my friends, is the law of release. The final key to building a mind so strong it scares mediocrity. A mind at peace with the past, present, and future. A mind light enough to fly and focused enough to lead. So when you rise tomorrow morning, let go before you go. Let go of bitterness and go with blessing. Let go of fear and go with faith. Let go of control and go with confidence. Let go of distraction and go with destiny, because the mind that releases what it cannot change becomes unstoppable in what it can. And that, beloved, is how you live free, think clear, and walk tall. Not as a slave to circumstance, but as a steward of destiny. Let go before you go. Release before you rise. Forgive before you fly, because freedom is the fragrance of a strong mind. That is the law of release. And with it, you have completed the framework for building a mind so strong it not only shapes your day, it shifts your destiny.